So yeah, I'm Darius, Eslc's communications manager. So we're just gonna, sit around here a bit today and talk a bit about Eslc's future, what we see coming ahead, things we enjoy working with each other within the communities that we serve, and just let it flow. So, David, just don't mind introducing yourself,
Sure.
telling a little bit about what you do, and yeah, just a little intro.
So I'm Dave Satterfield, and land program manager. Been here a little over 3 years. Started out at the bottom, moved my way to the top, and take care of all of our conservation work. So protecting the land easements and stewardship and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of work.
Lauren?
Lauren Halterman. I've been here about 2.5 years, and I'm the director of advancement, and I do fundraising, so David can save all the land.
Thanks, Lauren.
Yes, thanks, Lauren. I'm Carol Bean. I'm the agricultural specialist here. So I've been here about 1.5 years, and I'm working with our local farmers, trying to encourage new farmers to get access to farmland, making connections between our local food system and consumers, and just general ag education.
I'm Jim Bass. I'm the Coastal Resilience Program Manager, which means I'm the climate change guy. Eastern Shore of Maryland is the nation's third most vulnerable region to the impacts of sea level rise. And so we've got our work cut out with us, particularly keeping in mind our land protection efforts in Delmarva Oasis.
Awesome. So obviously this is the first time that a lot of us have been here, together, since March?
Yeah,
It's nice.
Yeah.
it's great.
So I want to just kind of start things off with just asking everybody to share, what do you enjoy most about being able to work together for ESLC? With our mission and where we're from. What all connects us to this place? What do you enjoy most about it? So anybody, just feel free to jump in.
I think one of the things I enjoy the most is one of the things I realized when I first came here, and it's that everybody who works here really believes in what they're doing and supports the mission, and it's either because that's their educational background or that's what they personally believe. Usually it's both. But I come from a higher education and government background, and not saying anything about that, but for a lot of people those are jobs, and jobs are good, jobs make money, but to work with people who truly have a passion for what they're doing and believe in what our mission is it makes it great to come to work every day. So I like you guys.
We like you too.
I think a good thing about the organization is we have a group of people with a diverse range of opinions and perspectives and backgrounds and skill sets that kind of touch on sort of the agricultural nature, the natural resources nature, the more community focused nature. So because we have that nice mix of people, we really can get stuff done and we get the work done efficiently.
Awesome. You guys have any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess for me, one of the things that I really appreciate about the opportunity to work here is sort of advancing the concept of a working landscape. So I think for a lot of people, when they think about conservation, it's more like, reservoirs, what would you call them? Reservations, or, that it's more sort of a passive use of the landscape. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk about how important it is for a rural region to have a working landscape, that the farming traditions and the fishing traditions of our region not only are part of what make this area so special, but that keeping those as vibrant industries is part of what keeps a rural character and keeps the open space and other things that environmentalists would sort of think of and embrace. So I appreciate the opportunity to advocate that concept.
Awesome.
I think I'm in a unique position with our climate change work in that I'm one of the threads of Eastern Shore Land Conservancy that kind of ties together all of the different pieces of the organization. Climate change is something that is going to impact every single different facet of our work. And so even if we have pieces of the organization that don't regularly touch one another in a really close way, I'm sort of the lens through which we are looking at the future, I think. So as we think about land protection, as we think about opportunities for farmers, as we think about building strong towns and resilient communities, like we've got to think about all of it with the impacts of climate change in mind. And so it's sort of the it's a huge vulnerability. It's a threat to the region, but also it's a big opportunity for us to advance the work that we're doing and use messaging around climate change to build a bright, vibrant Eastern Shore for the future.
Awesome. So I'll say for me, it's I just really enjoy the passion and intellect that everybody has here. I mean, every day I come to work, feel a little bit smarter because I've learned something, or somebody says something that made me feel dumb, and then I got to go research it and learn more about it. But then I always come back, feeling just more grounded in the fact that I've learned something new about this place and the work that we do. But the passion part sticks out a lot. I really wasn't as passionate for the Eastern Shore when I graduated from Washington College in 2015, so I moved away. And then I came back wanting to really get closer to that passion and just what it meant to be here. And if I had any other job, I really doubt that my passion would be as strong for Eastern Shore as it is right now. But come to a place where, I have over a dozen people working towards the same mission for the same place, same communities. I mean, it's going to really instill that passion in you. So, passion, intellect. I enjoy that the most for sure.
And I like that at ESLC, everybody, we've all got our jobs that we're responsible for doing, but we're also sort of given we're empowered to sort of explore our own paths to a certain extent.
Right.
Yes, your job is communications manager. Yes, your job is advancement director.
Whatever.
Job title's not the thing, right? But you've got your job to do, but help each other with the collaborative projects. Get engaged with the board. Go out and find ways to engage with the community. There are so many opportunities to find new things that you're passionate about and that you want to get creative with. And I've never experienced that with any other organization.
Right.
And I will say one other thing that I really like about my job is we talked about the passion that we have here, but we see it with all the people who support us and our donors and our board. It's not just writing checks and it's not just showing up to board meetings. It's really taking an interest in what we do, helping to make connections, helping to be advocates and push our message forward because it's something they care about. It's where we live. It's our community.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So on that note, I want to ask each of you, why are you here? Why did you get involved with the Eslc? What drew you here?
Well, it was easy for me. I grew up on the shore. My family was a hunting, fishing family. Grew up on a farm. So the connection to what we do here at Eslc was very easy. Even my family has an easement under our portfolio as well. So it was a nice, easy connection to get here. And my passion for wildlife and protection of wildlife habitat just was an easy translation for me. So this is definitely something that I have a huge passion for. I want our community to flourish, and at the same time, I also want it to be the way it was when I grew up because I enjoyed it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I want my grandchildren to be able to do that too.
Right.
And I'm not from the Eastern Shore, so I think bring a different perspective to the organization. But with my background is in emergency management, and through emergency planning for Talbot County, got into ESLC's climate change work and realized this is I can still be an emergency manager working for an environmental organization even though I've not historically really been an environmentalist. I grew up in Boy Scouts and I would always rather be outdoors than indoors. But the sort of seeing the overlap between traditional emergency management and community planning and climate change planning and sort of seeing the intersection of all of these cool things come together. I'm so excited to bring a skill set that I think not many people at ESLC have had before to the organization and use them in unique ways. I end up growing so much by sort of taking my career thus far and applying it in new ways. I'm definitely better for being here at this unique organization. And I hope that I can help other people grow and explore new professional possibilities as well.
I'm like Jim. I did not grow up here. I grew up on the wrong side of the bridge. I can say it. But I came to Washington College. I loved the shore and really kind of never left. But raised my kids here, and they like to hunt. They like to fish. We like the outdoors. But I just love the community here and the slow pace of life, but still lots of things to do. And I like working for an organization that's kind of trying to preserve that. So, and I like doing what I do because I like to help people do good things. So, I've always liked nonprofits, and I think it's a good way to give back. And I think this is a good way for people to get involved.
Well, I'll say for me, it's this goes back to the community again. Don't really see many organizations that do such great work within communities and for communities like Eslc Shore Land Conservancy. And I know I was looking at Eslc for maybe 2 years when my fiance and I were planning to move back here, and just didn't really see any positions that lined up with what I at least studied in college or what I'd done work-wise until I saw the position open up under the Center for Towns. And even that was just a real big eye-opener for me because it just showed that Eslc, even though land protection is its bread and butter, it was still devoted to the communities and making sure people prosper. So that just really stuck out to me, and I just feel like the Eastern Shore needs more organizations, more groups of people, kind of working in that way, just understanding the diversity in all of our communities and all the beliefs and the ways of living that we all have from county to county, and just taking a broad approach to support all of that. I don't really see much of that happening. So it's a cool place to be.
And Darius, I think there are a lot of stories like yours where people, they want to be a part of this organization, to see the great work we're doing, and they have to wait years and years to get in the door. And when they come in the door, they make an impact.
Right.
I think it speaks well when we're hiring folks that we have 50, 60 people applying for positions every time, and people tell a story, I've been waiting 2 or 3 years for something to open up for me to get in the door. And
Right.
it just speaks to how great our organization is, at least to the public.
Totally does.
I do a lot of public speaking with prior to the coronavirus, I did a lot of public speaking for my job, and it's always hard. You're thinking about giving a PowerPoint presentation to a community group in public, and you're obligated to have the one slide that has the history of your organization, or Eslc in a nutshell, and trying to take our story of the past 30 years and what we have grown from and how we have impacted the community, and to distill it down to 150 characters and a picture on a slide, that's really hard.
Oh yeah.
Make it fit in 20 seconds. We're a land trust, and we're an environmental nonprofit, and we're community planning, but we're also policy, and there's climate change, and we're farmers, and this and that. There's so many different pieces to it, and I feel like from the outside, you look at the organization, and I think that a community member could be forgiven for saying, but what don't these guys do? I don't really understand what the mission is. But then you get inside and you take a closer look, and I think it's really easy to say, okay, now I see how all of the pieces fit together.
Right.
And all of the different pieces are at some point indistinguishable from one another, because it's all about supporting the community, and it's all about making a positive difference, and it's all about preserving this really cool, special place that people are fortunate to have grown up with. And I hope that people for generations to come have that same opportunity.
Totally. Hear. Oh yeah. Carol, do you have any thoughts?
I guess, for me, I ended up here after a decade plus of, growing on my own small farm and selling locally, and working a little bit on the water with my husband, who's commercial waterman. And in some ways it feels a little bit of a mixed bag for me, because part of the reason for me of why I ended up here was just from the difficulties that I was experiencing making my own small farm be viable. So, we just, where we happen to be, it's, a couple of years in a row where we had, extreme precipitation, and I would lose, everything in the field. So it just made me, realize that I needed to be making some changes. And so when I saw the position at Eslc, was just sort of a fluke. I was working in the field one day, and I don't know why, it popped into my head, and I literally went inside and looked online, and there was a job for agricultural specialist at Eslc. And I was just thinking maybe I would get something part-time to sort of get a little bit of balance in my working life, but this was a full-time job, and I just could not get it out of my head. And so I was thrilled. I right away applied and was thrilled to be offered the position. And I guess for me, I feel like the experiences that I have had enabled me to just better connect and relate to the people that I'm trying to reach, the farmers that I'm dealing with. And I think from my experience of farming and also being married to a waterman, that those jobs are, and it's sort of a cliche, you'll always hear those people say, like, it's a way of life. And it is in a way that is really different than almost any other profession that I can think of. Like, it is 24/7, day in, day out, year in, year. It is all consuming. And I think that is sometimes alienates farmers and watermen from participating fully in sort of the community and the ways that other community members interact. So I think it's important to have people representing them who understand that perspective. I think that there's some really inherently unique things that come with being a farmer or fisherman. And I think the opportunity to serve, hopefully as some sort of a voice or advocate for them, is really a huge draw for me to work here.
One thing I was thinking about is, like, especially during COVID and all these Zoom calls and everything, you spend so much time talking about, like, what we're in the weeds about, or like what we should be doing or what we have to get done and all that. So I want to take a moment to ask each of you, what do you actually see ahead? What trends are you seeing in the work that you're doing right now? And I'll kick that off by saying that communications has changed a lot during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I've definitely recognized that people, they obviously have more time and capacity to sit down and listen or read something and just really digest it. But I've also noticed that just the frequency of communications has just really, really, really jumped up a lot. To the point where it's hard for a lot of folks to keep up. And I know I've been struggling sometimes here and there just to keep up with all the things that we can, be communicating about during these times. But the thing that's really stuck out to me is just how important it is just to tell stories. Whether it's like an organization that you work for or like, a club that you're a part of, everybody's just into telling stories right now. And it's giving me a stronger perspective of how important it is for ESLC to keep telling ours. So, how we're sitting here talking now, the interviews that we've done over the past few weeks is getting stories from people. And I'm like, this is all gold that, we have so many of these stories that we don't get out enough. So I'm just spinning my head about how can we just keep on doing that so we can let the public know what we do and, just get more support for the work that we do. It's a lot. It's a work in progress, and we'll see how it is next year once things hopefully settle down a little bit more. But I don't think it's going to change too much. I think a lot of what's happening communications-wise, virtual events, and obviously the Zoom calls and things like that, it's going to be here to stay for a while. But any other thoughts from you guys on trends you're seeing or how it's changing your work or how you're perceiving it?
I would say in a similar way that people are more engaged with the organizations that they want to support. In a very similar way, people are more engaged at a hyper-local level about the awareness of climate change and climate impacts. And, it kind of sucks being quarantined in your own home for months and months and months on end. But like when you spend months and months in your own home, you really start to know your own home and your own backyard. And it's amazing like at the beginning everybody was doing sourdough bread, right? And like we've got more people gardening right now than we've had since like immediately after World War II, right? So like there are trends in people, taking care of their own space, their own physical space, their own lands, their own property in a little bit different way. People are, I know from inquiries that I've gotten in conversations that I've participated in, people are asking questions about like at the block level, at the neighborhood level, what can I be doing to manage precipitation differently? Or I'm concerned about sea level rise, how is this going to affect my neighborhood in the future? People are really, really engaged at the type of level that we want them to be focused about. It's great to be thinking globally, but like if we're going to make a difference, it really needs to be grassroots. It really needs to start literally right in our own backyard. And the fact that more people seem to be thinking from that perspective, I think is one of the great things that's come out of this pandemic situation.
Oh, yeah. Hey, for better or for worse, I mean, look at those community Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Hyper-local.
But like, hey, emissions are down across the entire world, and for a long time right here in Maryland, we were like one of the leaders in decreased emissions from everybody teleworking, and I mean that's probably because there was such a drop in like traffic on 495. Like that's a big chunk of it right there. But like, if we've got this mindset now, if we don't necessarily need to be in the office from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, if we can sort of break the cycle of being so car dependent everywhere we go and constantly, creating CO2 emissions, let's get the entire world going on the right track of, polluting less, creating less waste. We've seen on a small
seen
scale.
It can be done.
Yeah. Like let's really commit to this. Let's make it a long-term thing.
Yeah.
And that I said, at the beginning of all this, we're going to learn a lot about ourselves personally. What you can tolerate in quarantine. How can you hoard toilet paper, that kind of thing. But also how you work, how you get along with your family, and what you can do to entertain yourself and take up gardening and that kind of thing. So it's been kind of a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people, that you can slow down. You can still work as hard as you were working, but you can maybe even it out a little bit. I think that's kind of the nicer thing. I miss this a lot.
Right.
This is great. So
You can't beat that.
no, Zoom
You can't.
Zoom is really not a good substitute for that. It gets the work done, but it doesn't get the camaraderie.
Yeah, and I'll say the thing that's really missing from that is just like the conversations that we have in passing. I mean, you have to schedule time to sit down and talk to each other about something, but then like, when we were here in the office, you could have gone up to a market, helping out the day before and then come in and tell us something about it, and then we're like, oh, that could be, an idea to, do this type of video about it, or, connect a farmer to that market or something like that. And it's just tough to really capitalize on those opportunities like that when you have to schedule to talk about them,
Yeah, I find it hard to, it's hard to sort of galvanize that collective energy to move something forward. I think that's something that I've, struggled with when you're sort of working so much in isolation and when you're confronted. I think, this situation has laid bare some pretty, hard truths, and I think you're right. There's some opportunities and things that come out of it, and I think, for me, I think I had this awareness just because of my background, but it was, interesting for me to see things like food security and food access and a regional food system, that those, maybe people don't necessarily talk about it in those terms, but those concepts, that there was such an incredible awareness about those issues, both what's sort of working, all of our farmers markets that were able to sort of pivot and be able to be open, And I think that awareness that those were deemed, like what is an essential service? I think that was something that really sort of came out of all this immediately. Like what's essential, and food and food production
It's essential.
is up at the top of the list there. I mean, and so hopefully that will galvanize people into coming up with some creative solutions to some of the issues that we've known exist for a long time, but that maybe the progress and figuring out a more progressive way and a more sustainable way hasn't been maybe moving at the speed with which you would hope. So I think that there's those opportunities. There's just a greater awareness of those things and the impact in your own sort of personal life. And for me, just that recognition from people of how important your farmers are. Like that's your food on your table for your family, and it doesn't get more essential than that.
Very true.
Well, I mean, from the land perspective, I think there are two big things that we're going to have to be thinking about for the upcoming years. One of them, COVID's really taught people they want to get out and do things. They want to go to parks. They want to take their kids on a trail. And so Eslc needs to be thinking about, like, how can we increase public access? Do we need to be involved more with program open space to build new parks like the Bentley Park we did, or the one up in Cecil County we did? I think that's going to be a major desire of people moving ahead. So it's definitely something we're going to have to move into. Conversely, there's going to be an urgency to our DO work because people are seeing that most of the infections are being caused in the cities, and they're thinking about moving to the country. They want to be in the smaller towns and the wide open spaces, and so it's more important now than ever for us to be protecting the resources, protecting the food security, protecting the natural resources and the habitat than it ever has been. Because I think we're going to see people from the Western Shore, from Philly or wherever, coming over here and trying to be part of this community.
Well, and I think that to me is it's also what is exciting about this time, because one of the things that we're always talking about is having those sort of vibrant towns and embracing smart growth, as opposed to sort of sprawling development. And I think one of those trends that you start to see in rural landscapes can be this, everybody wanting a sort of farmette and their 20 acres or their little slice of heaven, and and in this area for totally understandable reasons. But I think you have to take that a step further and understand the more that you fragment the landscape, you're really putting at risk the food supply. Like you need these mass contiguous blocks of land, and all land isn't created equal, and here in our region, it's an incredible, like the percentage of like prime farmland compared to the national average, we're like over 60%, I mean, so all land is not created equal, and we happen to be blessed to live in it, and that's why farming is such a huge part of the economy, and why we've been able to stay rural, because the farming was profitable, because we have great farmland here. It's been such a big part of this region, so it's really important that doesn't get sort of divvied up into little lots, and meantime our towns could really benefit from a revitalization. And we have great villages and towns, and they could use that sort of injection of vitality and creativity, and so we'll see. I'm curious to see what the future is going to hold on this.
Yeah. Well, it sounds we're ready to talk about Delmarva Oasis.
I was just gonna say,
I thought we have been.
Much about Delmarva Oasis.
Yeah,
That's all I think about.
it's a perfect segue. So I'm just going to read this question right off, because I don't remember this verbatim, but came from the strategic plan. So Delmarva Oasis seeks to permanently protect the most important wildlife habitats, migratory corridors, expand the area of protected working lands, grow and innovate the farming and rural industry infrastructure, and connect and commit our citizens to preserving the unique landscape and heritage of the region for future generations. It's a mouthful.
That's a lot.
And you couldn't remember that?
Got our work cut out for us.
So with all that said, what does that mean to you?
Means we're going to be preserving a lot of land.
It does.
But for a lot of good reasons. It's not saving land just to save land. There's a lot of specific reasons to do it, and I think there's a lot of targeted land to preserve.
Right.
I'll defer to the land guy though.
I know in our group, in our team, that we've been thinking about evaluating what is the most important lands to be protecting. Not trying to say that we are interested in protecting everything, but trying to figure out where those corridors are supposed to be, figuring out how we incorporate climate change into it, thinking about how we incorporate the town's work into it, making sure we're leaving room for smart growth. And it's a lot to take in. We're talking about 764,000 acres on the Delmarva Peninsula that still needs to be protected to reach a 50% goal. And that's
it?
a lot. That's it. Sure.
But we've saved more than 65,000.
Just 65,000. It's a big job, but I think I'm excited about the opportunity, and I think we have a great opportunity to really make change and protect what is here, but also help it to grow and be enhanced.
But can we go back to something you just said?
Sure.
So you said a really big number, 764. So that's Maryland, Delaware, Virginia.
It's everybody, yes. Everybody.
And so Maryland, in our section, we're about 30%
Somewhere between 27 and 30%,
preserved.
depending
And
on the
then
data.
Delaware and Virginia are
Delaware is around the same as we are, about 25 to 30%, and Virginia is about 40 to 41%.
okay. So when you say that big number, because I remember hearing that the first time, hearing the price tag, and was like, oh my gosh. But we're not starting from zero. So we're 25 to 30% towards our 50%. So we're in good shape. But we have our work cut out. We did that, and we did our piece of it in 30 years. We just need to work faster and harder.
Well, we also got to remember we're not doing this alone.
Right.
We have
some
tons of
great
partners. And we're obviously looking for more partners to make it happen. Whether that's the financial burden or whether that's new people who do the work. I think the more partnerships we have, the easier that goal is going to be for us.
Right.
Totally. Now, I'll say what keeps me up at night about DO is just the people that we're going to connect to it. So we talked about the fact that we protected 65,000 over the past 30 years. So if we keep that same rate, which we're not supposed to, because we got to accelerate it. But
don't remind me.
No pressure.
But if you do keep that same rate, then that's another generation's worth of people that we got to connect to this. So, I'm walking around thinking, how do I connect, my peers who are just starting to have families, who are thinking about coming back to the shore and buying farmland or something like that. And it's interesting because in this conversation and then in several other conversations this past few weeks, there's been a strong theme of, shifting more towards public access or figuring out how we can just be creative in providing that public access. And it was actually when I went to Colorado a couple of weeks ago, 3 months ago now, never mind.
Time is weird in this
Jesus.
time.
3 months ago. But it really kind of opened my eyes to just the concept of public access. And I was talking to the director of Parks and Rec for Castle Rock County, and he was telling me that for them, public access is, for one, it's always supported. The community, they're all for it, and you can tell because everybody's so active out there. They're skiing, they're hiking, mountain biking, the whole 9 yards. But the interesting thing he said was when it came time to support things like program open space or, large landscape level conservation projects, it was a no-brainer for the citizens because they already had that public access, so they knew the value of it.
Right.
So for us, I'm like, well, DO has a heavy price tag. We're going to need some, committed partners, committed funds, and obviously a committed staff, which you already have, to really drive it forward. But then when it comes to the community support, really got to help boost that public access up so they can start to understand more about why we need to ramp this up now.
Right.
And it's interesting because, I think we're in a good point to really drive that message home. I was on an email a couple of days ago, and I think you might have been on it too, Partners for Open Space, where they were talking about
social media campaign?
Yeah. and the thread where they were talking about the budget and how it's really tight.
Yeah.
And somebody had said that I think we had 213 full capacity days in parks across Maryland, which was more than the all-time high of, was it 113 or 116?
Yeah,
Wow.
something like that.
That's freaking crazy.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah. So I'm like, people are really getting out, and really starting to understand it. So, like I said, what keeps me up at night is it's like, how do we get more of our stories out there to harness that while people are already kind of woke to it, before they go back to sleep again.
Right.
Good point.
Yeah.
I think that, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
I think that reaching out to sort of the general public and really building a strong relationship with however you choose to define the general public, like that's the biggest hurdle that we have to get over, right? Like we do a really good job of interacting with a particular audience, but that particular audience isn't necessarily entirely representative of the entire community, I should say. And so the more that we can sort of take our message to the masses, and the more that we can get younger folks and a more diverse group of stakeholders into the stuff that we're really, really good at and the stuff that we have been all about for 30 years, it's not that we need to do things differently. It's just that I think we need to like broadcast ourselves a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And to me, that's such an exciting opportunity because like you were saying earlier, the rate at which communications are getting more out there to the whole community. Every single organization that we work with is doing a good job now of getting messages out, getting engagement up, and it's a much different world than it was even just a year ago. So I'm excited to continue building on that and build this network of partners that we really need for Del Mar Oasis.
So, yeah.
I think that's that's always a balancing act too. I think that people, are going to, whatever you're sort of, when you're connected, you're going to be more invested. So, if you have now a public access point to go fishing, or you're going to take advantage of, or if you're a hunter and you have a preserve that you're allowed to hunt on, or a bird watcher, but that there's sort of a balance. There's different sort of stakeholders, and some of those I think sometimes can be in conflict. And so I think being able to have that sort of bigger picture of why they're all important, and that we need to sort of make room for all of those different things. So not everyone wants to be go out there and go hunting, but that's hunters historically have been huge conservationists. In this country, and so finding a balance for that, so finding what people can connect with, so that they become engaged, and finding ways that we can acknowledge that maybe not what floats my boat, but that's part of what keeps this area as special.
So, yeah, and I think that's what makes Eslc special too. Because you look around this table, and the way we all connect to the land and nature and environment is, I'm sure, vastly different. Mm-hmm. Like David, I know you love birding.
I do.
I've never been birding a day in my life aside from just
Let's
sitting
go
on my
there
deck.
sometime.
But I'll go, man.
Last
I'll
night
go.
was the best night of the year.
I know it. Would love to. But you do birding, and I love biking on long roads. Seeing beautiful landscapes and trails all around, and so I think the special thing about Eslc is it's a platform for really anybody who loves what the Eastern Shore is about to connect with, and we've always had that welcoming type of environment.
Right.
It just speaks volumes to the people that support us, that come to our events, that watch our videos, that like our Facebook posts, that walk through this building. It goes a long way. So, like you said, the more that we broaden that message, the more that we're just going to get people hopping on this train that's going to get the deal accomplished.
Yeah. Well, that's it, dude. Like, it's right there on the banner behind you. Land, towns, people.
Yeah.
That's everything.
It is.
That
It
is
is all.
that is the Eastern Shore, and I think it's so anybody can see themselves in something that Eslc touches.
Right.
That's a cool organization to
It
be a
is.
part of.
It is.
It is.
It is.
And I'm glad you mentioned supporters, because we have a tremendous group of supporters, many who've been with us for 30 years, and feel the passion for it. And I will say, at the beginning of quarantine, when things were looking, nobody knew what was going to happen when, and we were talking about our party to preserve, and are we even going to be able to have it? What are we going to do? And everything was up and down. And I pride myself on always knowing what I feel. Might not be right, but those were some kind of weeks where everything was up and down, and you just didn't know. But here we are, getting ready to have our virtual party to preserve, and everybody is stuck with us, and we have loyal supporters who are interested, I think, in what they're going to see, but also just really want to support us. And it's been just a joy to see people stick by us.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
thank you. We
Totally.
do appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Well, speaking of support, it takes me to my next question. So, if you had $25,000 donated to your program or department in unrestricted funds,
Oh yeah.
got you, unrestricted, what would you do? And just a second, I'm really hoping that somebody listens to this and really kicks it out. So
Just like Shark Tank,
don't
we're
blow
making our
it.
pitch.
Don't blow
Sure,
it.
I can go first if you want me to.
Yeah, shoot, man. Shoot.
So I've got two different angles of approach. The first is I don't know how far 25,000 would take us. Might need like a little more than that.
Add a zero on that.
Several zeros if we're just talking. So we need more staff members behind the coastal resilience effort, and that's not just here at ESLC. Like
The world.
the world. We need more people focused on not just climate change, but the intersection of climate change with community planning and agriculture and the health of the Chesapeake Bay, all of it. We really need to ramp those efforts up because the world is changing at such a dramatic rate, and that's why initiatives like Delmarva Oasis are so important. So, number one, I would hire more people. Number two, live in shorelines as far as the eye can see.
You're gonna need a lot of zeros.
Lots of zeros.
He's well exceeding the 25,000, Jim.
Yeah, just write me a check.
One living shoreline.
I don't even think we get one for that.
It's not just as simple as living shoreline, but shoreline restoration, I guess, is the better answer. The rate at which we are experiencing erosion could be severely mitigated if we were smarter about how we protect the lands that we protect. And the more that we can use nature-based solutions and strong buffers to protect the lands that we protect, that is, in my mind, one of the most worthwhile investments that we can make. So I need more than $25,000, but
Hey, write the checks.
I think I would probably choose to focus around finding mechanisms that would link our regional farmers markets in a more coordinated way. So they operate fairly independently of one another in our region. And but to me, the farmers markets just present not only an economic opportunity for not only farmers, but there's watermen, there's I'm sort of partial to the food markets,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
but for value added stuff, it's not just the raw vegetables. I think there's so much potential with value added agriculture, and I would love to see more efforts in finding ways to support that through shared resources and regulatory changes perhaps and what have you. But I think that the farmers markets, by sort of linking the farmers markets, there's great opportunity since the farmers are right there. It's an opportunity to have sort of conversations and make connections with these growers, either the older ones for land transfers getting ready to be a big issue here. So sort of bringing some attention and maybe making some connections between older farmers who are retiring and younger farmers who are seeking land. And I think farmers markets are natural aggregation centers. So you'll hear a lot when people start talking about food hubs and things like that, and usually it's sort of a real infrastructure heavy approach. But I think the farmers markets offer a easy sort of entree into redirecting your food system a little bit. So it's a natural aggregation point. The farmers are already there. The food is already there. So I would definitely like, mobile refrigeration and ways to sort of, take advantage of the farmers markets and getting that food into other people's hands, and then maybe more institutional. So you think generally about hospitals or school systems, and that's a big nut to crack. But there's also senior centers and daycare centers. There's sort of a real localized approach that are easier connections to make, I think, that would go a long way towards creating a healthier citizenry, but also kind of revitalizing and reshaping our food system.
Carol, is there precedent for that? Is there anybody out there who's doing a system like that successfully?
Yeah, just someone who spoke at a symposium here last year, Community Food Works, and I just thought it was just a brilliant way to utilize the farmers markets. So it's a CSA that they operate out of there. They're using then their vehicle to do mobile farmers markets to sort of be able to serve food deserts and things like that to get food into neighborhoods where that maybe can't sustain or historically haven't sustained their own farmers market. So there's some great examples out there, and I think it would be perfect for the shore. And I think it fits with the sort of Delmarva Oasis. You could sort of start within our kind of footprint here, but definitely expand. And you can allow for the differences. Different farmers markets have different rules for different reasons. It's an expression of your community's interests and desires. I don't think you need to be real rigid about what type of growing or who's allowed to sell. I think it needs to be managed, but I think you can still create a linkage between them that would help to strengthen the regional food system.
Awesome. So
You really thought about that.
I think about it all the time.
Is that what keeps you up at night?
Well, I'll say I've thought about mine a lot, and if I had 25,000, then I'd really focus on storytelling. We have 65,000 acres worth of stories in the heartland of colonial America. Like, it all started here. And I mean, just from the past few weeks of people that I've met, I'm like, there are so many things that we can be getting out here, sharing with people to connect them to our mission and the land that we have, that we protected. And it kind of feels like a disservice to not tell those stories. I mean, it's a very low-cost investment, I say, for the yield that you'd be able to get from it, especially these days with the power of social media, being able to throw promo dollars at something on Facebook or whatever and just reach tens of thousands of people. It would go a long way. And so I would literally just take that 25 and then just spend a year, building a campaign to tell those stories. Talking to the farmers who have protected the land with us, since the very beginning, or others who have been donating to us since the very beginning. Past employees, board members, officials who have worked with us and, supported us when we ever needed, some legislation pushed toward. I feel like we really have to tell those. And the other thing that I think's really important that doesn't get spoke about much is just where race is in America right now. And there's a huge, need for reckoning. And, we're in Talbot County right now, the heart of it all, Frederick Douglass, the heart of it all. And I just feel like there's such power in having access to all of these acres of land, whereas these stories that need to be told, can be told. And I feel like it's on the people who have access to it to tell those stories, or at least make that possible in some way. Now, granted, not everybody's gonna be willing to tell those stories, and it's not even just stories of slavery or anything, but Native Americans, archaeology on some of these properties that we've protected, and seeing what other things we can pull out of that, and where that can go. I don't know. The possibilities are endless once you really start opening that book up and just start seeing what fills up those chapters. But I think it's really, really, really critical, especially for Del Mar Oasis, to tell those stories because, again, we got a new generation coming forward that we need to, come in and support us. Support all the other organizations around too. We're all, all family, but, we got a mission to do. So we need people to come in and keep on pushing it forward. Can't let the legacy die. That's me.
What would you do with your money?
Oh man, this is a question I saw earlier that I've struggled with a lot because land work costs a lot of money. I mean, $25,000 that maybe cover a survey on a property. You're talking about a lot of money being spent on land work.
That's good perspective in itself.
I mean, we've talked about $2.5 billion is the price tag for DO. So 25, put a bunch of zeros on there. Where we got that? We've got our money, but there's a selfish part of me that says, we've always wanted a truck-free Eslc for our stewardship people, so they didn't have to use their little cars to drive through the meadows and tear them up. Talked about getting an ATV to do that. We've talked about all kinds of things like that. But I think the key issue, as you point out, is race in today's, I don't want to say market, but in today's world is race. And I know that Black Lives Matter, for example, keys out that land trusts need to be more equal. So if we could use that money to invest in finding opportunities to help our communities, that aren't getting that access, who need community gardens, who need access to a farm to start a farming program. I feel like while there are some selfish interests, I think the money would be best invested in land work in helping to do that, even though we need a lot more than that. At least it would give us a start.
Yeah, launch pad.
I don't have anything because
I mean, you could
I
give
just
us
want
all
unrestricted
raises
money.
for it or something.
Well, I mean, 25,000 in unrestricted funds would help us keep doing our work. So it's boring. I mean, it keeps the lights on. It could help more staff, help us, build some more staff. We're small but mighty, but we could be mightier. I think we could make good use of it. Whatever we could, you have some great. The storytelling is great. And I think that also helps build awareness and helps
She doesn't like our
get more
ideas.
donors in,
Oh, yeah.
which that's part of our job.
They can just give us 50 and we'll work on that together.
Carol doesn't think you like her idea.
I love your idea. I do. I actually thought you were going to talk about helping farmers who may be in trouble. I thought that's where you were going to go with your
We
idea.
have plans for that as well.
We do.
Dave and I are working hard on that.
It's another 25.
Yeah.
I mean,
Or if
We've got
Ellen
some
were here,
ideas.
Ellen will be talking about open streets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think he'll talk about that later on his own. But there's
there's a lot we can do.
if there's more than one person out there that wants to do it, we could use it. We've got lots of ideas. And I think that's the challenge going forward is, everything would support Del Mar Oasis, which is the great thing
That's
about
right.
Del Mar Oasis. It's a big umbrella under which all of these ideas can exist.
Yeah.
We have no shortage of ideas. I think it's going to be exciting to move forward.
Agreed. Well, I don't have any more questions, but I mean, if y'all still got anything you want to put out there. Anything?
I don't
Yeah.
have anything.
This is great.
We could
Let's-
say
This is
thank.
fun.
We
Cheers.
could say
Hey.
thank you.
Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers.
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 Cheers, guys.
Air
Cheers.
Cheers.
Here's to another 30 years.
At least.
I'll be retired for part of it.
I might be close to retirement.
That's a lot to edit.
Ah,
Yeah, she's been with us all day. So.
don't you hate us now?
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, definitely.
Her eyes
Thank
have
you so
glazed
much.
over.
She fell asleep in the middle of it.
Saw the
She's
clip.
like,
Like
shit,
she-
I forgot